Hey team, it's John Krask with EveryLIbrary, the EveryLIbrary Institute. It is Summer Reads 2025, May 6th. We did it. We've been talking to a lot of authors this past 2 days with our little mini fest about summer reads, not summer reading. You know, like where you go to the library as a kid and you fill out the thing and you keep track of your books and maybe you get a pizza party at the end. That's a really big important part of libraries, though. But summer reads for those kids, those young adults as well, for people reading across all ages and genres. We've had a really good chat so far, and I'm looking forward to tonight's as well, because that connection between authors and their readers is so very important to us. The connection between authors and readers, that is at the heart of why we have libraries. You know, the kids who are gonna read 1,000 books during the summertime. Why would anyone want to buy those books if they didn't have to? But they're gonna buy a couple of them that they really love, and maybe they'll even give some of them as gifts. But the rest of them, let's just get out of the library. I want to have a big chat tonight with our friends about the books that they're writing, and it's because of so much of what's going on in America today, with book bans, with censorship, with the cuts and defunding, that we got to get back to our core. EveryLIbrary is the National Political Action Committee for Libraries. We care very much about what happens with the funding formula, with the authority for librarians to do their jobs, with the relationships between communities. If you're interested in those issues, please hit us up at everylibrary.org. In the meantime, I want to bring in three wonderful people who are going to share about their books and the love that they have for writing, the joy of reading. So, Ebony LaDelle, let me bring you in first. Do the intro, if I could. Hi, nice to see you. So, Ebony LaDelle is the author of Love Radio, named People Magazine's Best Book for the Summer, a 2023 Audie Award finalist, and a 2023 Michigan Notable Book. Was featured on the Today Show. Her latest novel, This Could Be Forever, continues her exploration of heartfelt, culturally rich love stories. Ebony is also the editor of the forthcoming romance anthology, You've Got a Place Here Too. And before becoming an author, she worked as a brand marketing director in publishing at Penguin Random House and HarperCollins. Ebony, it is such a joy to be with you today. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about the difference between, being on the publisher side and being on the author side as well tonight as we go along. So let me also bring in Shea Ernshaw. My apologies, Shea, as you're coming on. Don't give me that look. So Shea Ernshaw is the #1 New York Times and USA Today bestselling author whose work has been published in over 20 countries. She's the winner of the Oregon Book Award and the author of The Beautiful Maddening, a haunting contemporary fantasy about love, legacy, and curses. Shea lives in a small mountain town in Oregon and is happiest when lost in a good book, exploring the woods, or writing her next novel. Thank you for joining us. From what little town in the mountains in Oregon, can I ask?
Well, I try not to name the actual town.
Then don't do it. Don't do it. Nope.
But
yeah. So is it Oregon to you or is it Oregon to you?
It's Oregon. Yeah.
Oregon. Okay. There's three. I didn't realize there were 3 ways to pronounce it. That's fantastic.
There's a lot, actually.
Thank you for being a part of our conversation tonight.
Thanks, John.
Absolutely. And then Rebecca Danzenbaker. Rebecca, here we go. Pushing buttons. There we go. Good. Rebecca is the author of Soul Match, a speculative YA romance that explores destiny, danger, and second chances. She's worn many creative hats, elementary school music teacher, which I got to tell you, it's got to be the most perilous job in all of education. The Congressional Quarterly manager, an award-winning photographer, and she brings her wide-ranging experience to her writing. When she's not editing words or photos, Rebecca is reading, hiking, traveling, or cheering on her family. Soul Match is her debut novel, and the culmination of 5 years of hard work and passion. And I'm not kidding. About elementary school music teacher, Rebecca, I don't think I could handle that.
Yeah, the recorders, like 3rd grade recorders, that was next level.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's really sincere.
Yeah, but they were adorable. Like it was really fun. And then like it was the politics of it that actually drove me out. Like every year we were fighting for funding, so it was just it was difficult. Yeah,
I can imagine. All right, I want to chat with each of you about your books a little bit, and but I got some general questions about writing. each of you does puts a lot of love into your books, and and that love and destiny, in a lot of ways, is the hearts of those stories that you've all been writing. What drew you individually, once around, to those themes when you first started writing your latest book, Rebecca? With this being your first one, love and destiny. Like, what's the through line for you?
Yeah, so I always gravitate towards stories with romance in them. So when I started to draft Soul Match, where teens are required to learn about their past lives on their 18th birthday, I also threw in a method for the government to identify soulmates. And so that gives the teenagers an incentive to show up for this life-altering event.
Yeah, what can you describe that a little bit more for our listeners, our watchers, our readers?
Yeah, so the technology has developed enough where the government can take a photo of you and identify your soul, and then connect that photo to previous lives. So it takes place 200 years in the future, where now everybody has about 3 to 5 lives, and you're judged by the mistakes of your past lives. So you can't really escape who you were in the past, but you carry forward any talents that you have and your inheritance. So you show up and you receive your inheritance, and then also any prison sentences. If you haven't completed a prison sentence, you could be taken directly to jail.
You know, when you think about ideas around destiny, and you are bound by that previous life, but also benefit from it, and yet the sense of agency that any character would have about how to run their own life today, that makes for some really interesting storytelling, I would think.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating. I mean, I've, of course, like at this point, it's my debut, so I had to work on it a ton for the years leading up to getting an agent and then a book deal. I still am absolutely obsessed with this novel. I know I should be tired of it by now, but I enjoy reading it every time I read it. So I hope readers do as well.
Well, I mean, forgive me. I mean, you don't have to be tired of it. You know, it's quite lovely that you still, it still brings you some joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe it stems from when I was writing it, I didn't write it with the intent to publish. I was just writing it to amuse myself during COVID. I had this idea for like 10 years, and I was like, well, I always said if I had the time, I'd write this novel. So I jumped on a webinar like class that Lisa Cron had recorded. And it was like Story Genius, like how to craft a good story. And I used that to outline something, and then I just jumped in. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was more for myself, like something fun to write.
There is a bravery to that, and I appreciate it very much. So, Ebony, let me bring you in here with that same kind of question about love and destiny at the heart of your stories, and the themes that you want to be able to ripen when you're writing.
Yeah. So, and this could be forever. You have 2 teenagers. This is an interracial, intercultural relationship. Is Deja, who is, so I would say that they're sort of like the masters of their own destiny or fate. That's if that's how you say it, right? Deja is going to school in Maryland. She wants to be a cosmetic chemist because she was raised on a farm and she learned from her grandmother. And so she wants to sort of create natural skincare particularly for Black and brown women. And Raja is a first generation Nepali boy who is going to school for what his parents want him to go to school for, but he's trying to sort of reshape his destiny to go to school for what he wants to go for, which is graphic design, so that he could become a tattoo artist. And it's one of those things where, as fate has it, they're in the right place at the right time. She decides that she wants to go to school. And so she goes into a tattoo shop to celebrate. And Raja is the one that gives her a tattoo. And from there, it sort of becomes this thing where destiny unfolds. But I also wanted to talk about it because, you know, there's also sort of like the predetermined fate of what your parents, with your family, what society wants for you versus like the love that you want for yourself. And so while these 2 people have like sort of come together in ways that they can't even understand, they have all these forces conspiring against them. And so I wanted to sort of talk about sometimes when you are on like a destined path, and in this case, using love, how you can sort of have those forces coming against you.
Well, in Rebecca's story, it goes back several generations, but every family today, I mean, the hardest part about raising your kid is letting your kid discover their own life. But I'm terrible at it, as a
Most
parent.
people are, yeah.
Yeah,
And I definitely think that summer before college is like the weirdest part of it all, because you're like, okay, I'm finally adult. I'm about to go off and do this big girl thing. Your parents like, whoa, wait a minute. You're like, no, you got to fall back, So it's just like that push and pull of trusting your kids to know that, like, as a parent, you've done your best job and now you have to let them fly.
Yeah, so the theme of destiny there, it's interesting. That is woven across the same kind of question that I had for Rebecca a moment ago. Like, how do you adopt your own agency when your responsibilities, in a YA setting, your responsibilities to family, your responsibilities to image of self, which one wins in your storytelling?
A lot of what I was playing off of this story is because you have two different cultures that are very strong culturally. Like, they have their ties, they have their traditions. And as someone who also grew up personally with a culture that has very strong ties and traditions, and also Deja is from the South. I have family from the South. And so I'm very familiar with like that Southern Baptist tradition of there are things that you're supposed to do because that's the way we do things. And how do you respectfully push back? And so I think so much of that story, I walked into the story knowing that I do want to teach teenagers that you can and should be respectful for your family, because I think that is important. And also, like, there is something that's okay with like questioning certain beliefs and certain customs and certain traditions that just don't make sense. They're just rules that have been imparted, but like, what is the sort of heart behind the rules?
I think that's a very interesting, keeping faith without breaking faith, but also making your own way. That's a real strong story to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask Shea about The Beautiful Maddening and the approach, again, love and destiny as interwoven themes. The heart of things with your story. How did you approach those themes?
Yeah, for me, I've always been really fascinated by the idea that love isn't just a feeling, but it's a force. I think it has momentum. It's like a living, breathing, very unpredictable thing. And in The Beautiful Maddening, love for my main character is something that she ultimately fears. Her ancestors have warned her that love cannot be trusted in the family because love comes so easily for them, which makes it nearly impossible to know if someone loves you, is it real? Is it true? Is it not? Because it might just be the family curse. So for my main character, I think love and destiny are painfully intertwined, which causes her to really doubt whether the stories told to her by her ancestors are even true or not. Very much what Ebony was saying. My main character really doubts if these sort of family legacies and these stories that have been told to her for generations, are they true? Are they not? Are they based on folklore? And should she believe in that, or should she really carve her own path in life, which is hard to do for anybody. But yeah, I think love and destiny are really the crux of this book.
A force the idea of love as a force is very vivid. That kind of made me sit up a little straight. But when you're in a conflict or in a story, you're in a location in the story, the force is either coming at you and you're trying to resist it, or maybe you're born up by it, or you're born forward by it. How does love as a force work in your book?
It's really the main center point of the whole book. And if love is something you can't trust, because in the story, basically tulips, there's a cursed garden in their backyard. And the story goes that because of these tulips, everyone in town will always fall in love with anyone in this family. So you can't trust if it's real or not. You just have this gravity that sort of is pulling people towards anyone who's born in this family, in this house. Now, is that true or is that not? Do the people in town just believe that this is the case? And so everyone just falls into this trap. And I think the whole town is complicit in this. You've got a whole family that's complicit in it. So how do you know what's real, what isn't? And so the force or the thrust behind that becomes something that's hard to really change the trajectory of if you're the main character in this.
Yeah, let me follow up on that, because with yours, Magical Tulips, the soul match technology, the falling for someone who's unexpected in Ebony's story, all of your books are looking at how love can change a character's life forever. How do you balance, Shea? Why don't you go first? The sweetness of romance stories with the deeper stakes that come from that.
For me, love really is the deeper stake in this book, because risking loving someone for my main character is the biggest danger. It's what she spent her whole life trying to avoid. So romance really wasn't a break from the plot for me. It is the center point. It's the axis for the whole story. For me, it was more of a mental task to remind myself that love was the anchor of the book and that I didn't need any other plot elements to add danger or suspense or mystery, which is more common in my other books. I had to trust that love would be enough, that love could be all of those things, and let that be the driving force of the book.
That's really interesting. Let me ask Rebecca about the same thing. Your soul matches, your Magic Tulips, the falling, the sweetness of romance, and the deeper stakes of following your own destiny, setting your own path.
So in Soul Match, people can be matched as soulmates, but only a very small portion of the population has soulmates. It's almost a connection that's like revered. So my main character, like, already knows what heartache would await her if she fell in love with somebody that had an identified soulmate, and yet she cannot, like, you cannot control who you fall in love with and who you have feelings for. So the stakes become part of the plot, and that you have this forbidden romance sort of situation. Like, I know I cannot love this person because they will never love me back in the same way that I care for them, because they already have this connection with somebody else. And yet I have given them my whole heart. And how do I deal with that? So I love, like, the forbidden romance trope. I also love a good slow burn to kind of push the trajectory of a plot. So I love all of the angst that comes with teen love too. And like Ebony's too, with that forbidden romance angle, like, oh, that's such a plot driver. And like, it just drives up the tension and the angst. It's like so good.
Yeah. Ebony, the title of your book is This Could Be Forever. And I'm not playing with language here, but is it could be forever, or is it could be forever?
Depends. I would say that for how I was able to balance it is, one, I knew essentially the plot of the story. It is a plot of two teenagers who, because of their family dynamics, they're technically not supposed to be together. Raja is supposed to, be in an arranged marriage. Deja's family has concerns about her dating someone who is not Black because they are worried that they won't be able to protect her in the United States. And so that was really the core of the book. And so I had to make sure that the love came on the page immediately. So for me, I actually wrote a trope that I am not one to normally like believe in, which is insta love. I'm not saying that I don't believe in it. I'm just saying that I have a hard time comprehending it myself, because I'm not going to meet a guy and be like, oh, this is it. It's like, I have trust issues. What are we doing here? But it was really fun to, and that's the beauty of like young love. It's like, you are allowing yourself to fully just show up as yourself, right? And so they both come together, they have these intense feelings, and they're like, you know what, let's let it ride. Let's see what comes of it. And it's everything around them that's trying to stop them. So it was really nice because it grounded the story. It was like, at the end of the day, Ebony, you have to be mindful of how much you're putting in. There's a lot happening around them. It's in a lot of ways true to life. It's something I've even experienced before myself. And so I wanted to make sure at its core, the love was always there. And so I think for me, that really kept the romance part strong, because that was what centered me as I was writing the story.
Yeah. I mean, YA readers, whether it's YA chronologically aged, or people who, they might be 75 years old and they love YA. They want strong, complex characters. They want a deep story. Ebony, let me stay with you on this. The character who's both relatable, but yet there's a larger than life issue going on that keeps you in the book. I mean, how do you keep your characters relatable in that kind of a context?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think it's just something that, well, one, I would say as a Black woman, this was something that was talked about in Love Radio too, how I was able to have so much happening around the characters while still being able to have the characters be the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that just comes from lived experience where, if you fall in love, there is so much happening. There's so much more that you have to deal with, even as a teenager. Like, the adultification of teens is real. And so, like, for Love Radio, you had a character who was a caregiver to his mother, who had MS. And this could be forever. You have two teenagers who are dealing with their parents not being able to trust that they can make the right decisions. And so I don't know. I think it's just a natural thing because it's something that I've had to experience and push back against, and people close to me have had to experience and push back against. But I think the beauty of it is when you're able to do it right, you can really touch a lot of readers because they're like, I actually see myself in this character. So I would say a lot of editing as well.
Okay.
Like, there's a lot that you're trying to put in, and just like really coming to terms with, okay, this is great, but this might not be for this story. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but it helps you kind of like fine tune what is the most important part, the meat of it.
That's really cool. Let me ask Shea and Rebecca a little bit of a different question, because, and Shea, I'm not trying to put you in a box here by asking you this, but world building, okay, when you have a fantasy element like that or a magical element to it, how do you characterize the book? Is it a fantasy, or is it a magical reality? And again, I'm not trying to put you in a particular category.
Are you asking like what genre does my book fall within?
Yeah, where do you place it? Because there's something in it that's extraordinary, or is it?
Well, this is a funny question for me because I always struggle with keeping my books within a set genre. I don't even understand the genres, to be honest. I'm always asking my agent, like, where does my book get shelved?
Are you just breaking genre rules on purpose or on accident? Yeah, okay.
I think it's on accident. It's just not something that my brain is thinking about as I'm writing. I mean, I think genre is like a container, and the story really kind of tells you what it needs and where it wants to go. And I try to just follow that.
Yeah.
Good
So
or bad.
let me come back to the world building then, because forgive me, your book does have an element that's not like you're going to the mall.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean like how do I world build?
Yeah, I mean, you have a magical tulip. How do you world build?
That's my favorite part, is world building. I think I could write an entire book just describing a tree. Nobody would read that book, but I would really enjoy writing it.
Well, sure.
I struggle with character development, but the world building for me is like creating the scaffolding that the story gets to be built on top of. I think writing is a lot like a layer cake, and creating that setting and that world is like the foundation. And once you have that, at least for me, it's a lot easier to then create the characters once I have a world that they can run around in. But for me, that's the part I enjoy the most. I can describe to you the town, the way the walls look in a house, but as soon as you want me to tell you what a character is feeling, that's the struggle.
I mean, we all have our moments as writers. You know, there is that. I got to tell you, actually, I went to college to be a playwright, and I dropped out after a semester of that program because I was like, I don't have any chance in hell of of writing a play. I went to stage management, which is why I'm here with you today. You know. Rebecca, let me ask you a similar question about world building, because you have a very futuristic setting, and you're 200 years in the future. Imagination around that, the imagining of it, but yet these are human characters who are benefiting in a certain respect from technology.
So when I actually first started sending Soul Match out to beta readers, this is like early drafts, some of the feedback was that it didn't feel futuristic enough.
And in my head, which wasn't explained on page, there was a reason for that, that over those 2 centuries from now until when the novel takes place, certain world events would keep innovation, like it would like hold it back, like hamper innovation from coming about. So it felt very much like our world with just a few little things. But as you know, you digest feedback and you start to make more revisions and more revisions, like I would just start to pepper in what I would call like the jewelry, like the fun stuff, the fun tech that I hope feels more like a fantasy element or magical than it does like sci-fi. Because I do think this reads, and it has been pitched even by my publisher, very much as a romantasy, because I think the tech elements feel very magical. So I think it does genre, like, I don't know if I could say it genre blends, but I think you could put it in a million different genres, because it has a lot of dystopian elements, but it's also in a somewhat utopian world, or in kind of like a false utopia where it feels like everything's wonderful because the world is at peace. And I tell people, I'm like, well, we live in like North America because there was a war 200 years ago. So now we're just the North American government. But there are some, like, as you get into the novel, you'll kind of feel some undercurrents of that dystopia coming out. And then it just kind of snowballs as the novel goes through. But then again, you have some fantasy elements-ish, and then a lot of romance. And honestly, the middle chunk of my novel, when it went through acquisitions and it got bought, was basically a contemporary romance novel. And my editor pointed it out to me and she was like, so you're dystopia and then you're contemporary romance and then you're dystopia. So we had to like take all of that romantic tension that I was building in that middle section and then weave in all of the high stakes that come with a dystopian, like, you know, plot driven, you know, kind of novel. So that was really fun. It was a lot of work, but I love it that much more now. Like, it's just a really exciting story.
That's fantastic. Did you surprise yourself while you were writing it like that?
Absolutely. In fact, when I finished my second round of developmental edits, which ended up being the version that went to copy edits, I burst into tears because I was so, and I texted all my friends. I was like, I'm so proud of myself. It's so much better. And I just loved how, like, I was able to put in bookends that I had never imagined. Like, there were little notes I'd made myself on the side. Like, if you can ever fit this in, you should do it. Like, all of the bookends now fit in just so seamlessly. So if you read it and you're like, wow, how'd she tie that in? I don't know either, because it wasn't like that when it was acquired. Like, it's so much better. And my editor is fantastic on how she'll be like, hey, maybe think about this. Like, can you work that in? And it would just spark my imagination. And I'd be like, ooh, I know what to do, you know? And like, I would get so excited to go into my next round of revisions. So that's just kudos to I'll just do a shout out to Nicole really quickly, my editor, because she's fantastic. Like, I just love working with her. Yeah,
having a good partnership with an editor is a magical thing. It really is. And also, do you all have audio book versions of your current books?
I will.
Okay. You will? Congratulations. That's going to be great fun, because all the conversations I've had on camera with authors and their narrators have been absolutely fascinating. You know, the person who has that chance to take it after the editing is all finished and then put a literal voice to it. That's kind of a neat thing. So
I'm excited.
Let me ask Shea first, and then Ebony, kind of a similar question. What surprised you about writing your book? And with no spoilers, Shea. No spoilers.
There's always surprises. You know, I usually map out my books pretty thoroughly. But then ultimately my characters end up showing me what the real story is. And usually there's a plot twist or two that I didn't see coming. But I think, you know, often plot twists usually work the best if they feel inevitable in hindsight. And I think but when you're reading it, you're surprised, and then you look back and you go, well, of course, this is where we're going to end up. But I think the story always knew that's where we were going. I usually didn't know that that's where we were going to end up. So I think that every book surprises me. I just try to meet the story on the page and let it show me where we're going.
I think that's quite lovely. Ebony, how about you? Were you? I mean, you mentioned earlier about pulling stuff out that isn't right for this book, but I mean, you know, what's the surprise that kind of delighted you about writing it?
I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I'm gonna say the same thing that Shea said. Like, I also am one that plots out my book and I know where it's gonna go. And it's actually my favorite part of my writing, because now I'm I'd say 2.5, because I have an anthology coming out too. So I'm 2.5 stories in. And I would say that every time it happens, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, and then the characters just go left, and I'm like, oh, okay. But that's probably the most exciting part to me, because that's when I feel like, okay, my characters have taken on a life of its own. And as Shea was saying, like, it's a really important aspect of the book that, like, once you finish it, you're like, I don't know how I could have imagined doing it the way that I was talking about doing it before. But yeah, that's what I love about writing, when it just completely goes off the rails.
That's fascinating. Rebecca, I saw you're gesturing violently there about yourself as well. The fact that all three of you plot is very interesting. And I'm not writing fiction. When I write, you know, white papers and policy briefs about tax policy and education policy for libraries. And I'm a pantser when it comes to that. I'm like, okay, I did my reading, I did my research, but I'm gonna let's see what happens with this paper. Rebecca, are you 3x5 cards? What do you use?
I use Dabble Writer just to kind of, and I've tried doing the whole grid where you map out where each character is, and that was a total disaster. I like, after 2 chapters, I was like, why did I spend days to do a grid? So I think what works best for me is to just do a few sentences per scene of what needs to happen in that scene. And that is good, in that I'll figure out where I'm going to end up, like where the arcs are all going and leading to. But then, like both of them, I start writing it and things get more exciting than I ever dreamed they could be. And so I start having more fun, because I'm also discovering the story a little bit, but it always ends up where I was originally planning it to. It just maybe diverges a little in the woods. Takes a road less traveled. So
Oh, I dig that. I really do. All right, we're getting to that point with our time together, and I really appreciate you sharing about your craft, your works. I also want to hear a little bit about libraries, because we all sing for our supper when we come on these things. And EveryLIbrary, the National Political Action Committee for Libraries, summer reads. Again, you know, it's the author, publisher, library reader connection here. I mean, did any of you do summer reading when you were kids and go to the library and all that kind of stuff? Who wants to tell me that story? I want to hear that.
I can start. I didn't, so I didn't actually, like, the summer was where the library, like, that's what I was doing. Me and my mother, I grew up right outside of Detroit, Oak Park.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually went to the Oak Park Library for the first time in like decades, when Love Radio was a Michigan notable pick. And it was so surreal to walk in that library.
Yeah, how's it holding up? Is it all right?
It's holding up fine. It still looks
good.
the same. It was the craziest experience to be taller and walking in the library. Because I'm like looking, a little baby is like walking towards me. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? It was adorable.
Yeah.
But yeah, my mother and I, that was, you know, free activities. My parents were divorced in different states. And so the library was our go-to place. And so weekly, she would take me to the library. We would both check out books. We would spend time in the library. We'd take it home and read it. And so libraries are really crucial to just every aspect of my life. The library is where I found my first book, The Skin I'm In, that made me feel seen in ways that I had never felt seen before. And I owe a great deal to the library. And I'm also, it's very important for me as a BIPOC woman to make sure that teens who look like me have access to books if they're unable to because of financial means.
We had an earlier conversation today where Michelle Pillow, who's a wonderful author, mentioned that she said that no one's access to the library should be bound by, and I wrote it down, should be bound by budget or bias, you know? And I'm like, that, I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt.
That's beautiful. Yes. I can't compete with that. I love it.
No,
put it on everything.
I'm not calling anybody out.
But no,
but I was
it's
touched
so
by that.
true. Yeah, it's also true.
Thank you for sharing that. So I saw nods from Shea and Rebecca about summer reading challenge. Did anybody win the pizza party?
Well, similar to Ebony, my mom would take me to the library. I feel like I was raised by my local library.
Oh my goodness.
We would go a couple times a week. She says now that, in wintertime, we would go to the library because it was always warm and there was carpet. And when I was a toddler, she could just let me run around and she would go pick up books. And then every summer, our local library would have free books that you could take home and keep forever.
Love that.
And to me, that was the most special day. I looked forward to that every summer. And my mom would say, okay, you can go pick out one book and you get to keep that forever. And so I really feel like I was raised by the library. We were there every single week. So it was a really special place for me. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know what you mean. I spent a lot of time there on the way home from school myself, at some point or another. So that's really cool. Rebecca, I'm looking for a pizza party story still.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I wish you could see the back of my laptop because I have a big Book It sticker on it.
Okay, there you go.
From when we would do the Book It challenges and, all of that. So it's odd. I think back to my childhood, and I have two sisters and we're all very close in age, and they were both, well, we were all for a while cheerleaders, but after a few summers of this, I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not a cheerleader. I would be the one, like my mom would take us to the mall and I'd be like, just drop me at Weldon Books, and they would go shopping for clothes. And then they would come back an hour later and I would have my stack and be like, this is what I want. Yep. But my earliest memories of being in the library was actually after I had my driver's license, and I loved the freedom of being able to go on my own to the library and spend as much time as I wanted, just perusing the shelves. And I'm getting chills right now because I just feel like it was like a magical moment where I didn't have my loud sisters around me. I'm sure my husband is watching and laughing his butt off right now, but like I didn't have my loud sisters around me, and I could just spend time in this peaceful environment and just sit and read. Like, I just remember pulling books off the shelves and reading the jacket copies and like finding my stack and then being so proud of myself walking out with all of my books. So,
that's really great. Okay, so real quick, talk about genre, violating the genre. Your freedom of driving meant that you got to go to the library.
Yeah.
Is that okay? That's the nerdiest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it was congratulations. Such work. I really am.
That's fantastic. I mean, like the Bruce Springsteen song says, you go down to the river and you're going to the river. That's just,
yeah.
I love it. I love it. All three of you are wonderful people. Thank you for sharing those library stories with me today, and our watchers, our listeners, our readers. The chance to be able to meet you as writers for some great YA fiction, the good summer read that everybody should pick up for their beach bag, for their tote bag, their briefcase, their book bag. I'm really glad that you could spend this time with me today. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. This is so touching. I had such a great time.
Good. That's really nice.
Thank you, John. Thank you. The questions are wonderful. Yeah. I really appreciate you.
That's really nice of you to say that. Thanks. Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep you all in the green room. We're going to do the wave at everybody here, and I'm going to turn off the machine, okay? See you soon, everybody.